Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this National Tele-Town Hall, sponsored by the Transformative Justice Coalition. I am attorney Daryl Jones, the board chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, and we're so excited that you have decided to join us this evening. I would call this a celebration. I would call this a discussion. I would call this a lot of things. What I will say is that it's going to be an honest dialogue. And, today, February the 23rd, 2020, at approximately 1 p.m., Ahmaud Arbery died. He was killed, slain in the streets of Brunswick, Georgia, by three racist murderers. He was slain because he was jogging through their neighborhood. And in the words of Gregory McMichael, who was one of the three killers, the father of the shooter, Travis McMichael, he was trapped like a rat, and they killed him. We come here today, and we come here every year on February 23rd to honor Ahmaud's life, to honor his family, and to also uplift the community. Because what the celebration that we're doing here today with Ahmaud Arbery is about. Ahmaud Arbery on February 23rd, 2020, became part of Black history. Ahmaud Arbery on February 23rd, 2020, became living history. It became a voting rights case. It became a motivator for young Black people across America to get involved politically. So we come here this February 23rd, 2024, 4 years after the slaying, the fourth year after the slaying, to renew our commitment to being certain that voting rights are upheld and not played with, that the dignity, the honor, and all the positivity of the African American is represented and in full defense. We call it Worthy, in defense of justice for Ahmaud Arbery, Black history, and voting rights. So I welcome you all this evening to this discussion. For those that are wondering, why is Ahmaud Arbery a voting rights case? Very briefly. After Ahmaud Arbery was slain, at that time, Jacqueline Johnson, the prosecutor, was up for re-election. She had no opposition. It was beyond the time for anybody to even file to run against her. She would become an unopposed candidate for the position of state's attorney in Brunswick, Glenn County. Well, after the slaying, she lied and done all of this other stuff to Marcus Arbery and the family, and just had such a treacherous history of lying and just hiding information, that the family, along with the community, got together and did a petition and was able to get sufficient number of names and signatures to get another name on the ballot to run against Jacqueline Johnson. But they didn't stop there. The family and the community got together and they worked for that candidate. And for the first time in Glenn County's history, an incumbent prosecutor was defeated. That's the power of the ballot. That's the power of the commitment. And it was the power of Ahmaud Arbery's life and his family. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this discussion of Worthy, Ahmaud Arbery, Black history, and voting rights. It's my pleasure to bring up the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition for her opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome attorney Barbara Arnwine. Barbara.
Wow. Thank you so much, Daryl, for getting us underway. Thank you to every single person who has joined today's broadcast. If you're on by Facebook, if you're on by YouTube, if you're on by Instagram, we welcome all of you. Thank you for taking the time out of your Friday night to show up and to be here to show love to the Arbery family. On this day, this is a day of grief in the sense that nobody can ever get over the loss of a loved one, such a tragic and brutal loss. It's also a day of triumph because the family has been triumphant in bringing the murderers to conviction, and they are in jail. However, the story doesn't stop there, does it? The story continues with their agitation and paying money and doing everything else they can to have their convictions overturned, both at the federal level and the state level. We have been on Scintilla Way. We have walked that street, and we have seen family members of these killers, staring and glaring, feeling self-righteous that somehow harm was done to them, but Ahmaud's in the grave for no good reason. So for that reason, tonight, I want to extend all the thanks, all the gratitude, all the expressions of love to the family, to his family. I want to thank Marcus Arbery, who you're going to hear speak shortly after I finish, to Kimberly Cummins, to Diane Jackson Arbery, to Gary Arbery, to William, to Yvonne, to all of the amazing Arbery family, to the cousins, the nieces, the sisters, to everybody. We want you to understand one thing today, that that you should never, ever feel abandoned. You should never feel forgotten. We know that those on high have not forgotten you. But you know that those of us who are earthly beings, that we will fight for you. You will never be alone. So we want to thank you for the honor, Arbery family, of letting us lift up the spirit of your beloved Ahmaud. We also want to give a special greeting to the people of Brunswick who have gathered here at the church. Thank you for all the marching. Thank you for all the protests. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for all of your commitment to making sure that the amazing Ahmaud Arbery is never forgotten. Thank you for using your vote to vindicate his name. Thank you for using your vote to elect new elected officials in your community who care about the legacy of Ahmaud Arbery. We also want to thank Reverend Jane Page, for hosting the Community Watch at the Unitarian Universalist Coastal Georgia Church. Thank you so much. It means so much when we're able to gather together. We also want you to know that we are committed to one thing, Daryl, and that's called what? 100% justice for Ahmaud. And without that, we will never, ever be satisfied. That means not only must these convictions stick, but it also means that we want to make sure that there is also, continued, legacy building, for Ahmaud, and that we fight in the vineyards as you have fought over these years. My story, as Daryl has said, is a story of voting rights. You're going to hear about that today. The first thing you're going to hear about is from Gerald Griggs. And Gerald Griggs is going to tell you about why this battle is not over, why we want you to join us in Atlanta on March 27th to the day of the hearing, the oral argument in this appeal that they're trying to bring, saying that they were not, that they should not have been convicted under the Hate Crimes Act. We will also, continue. He'll tell you some about the fight to convict the prosecutor who helped to bury in the first number of months the true story about what happened to Ahmaud. And he's going to talk about why there's no 100% justice until she's brought to justice, because she acted illegally. She's been criminally charged, but 4 years later, nothing has happened in her trial to move it forward. So we're going to talk about that. So you're going to hear from Attorney Gerald Griggs. You're going to also hear from him about the assault on voting rights, but you're going to hear that from others too. You're going to hear from Professor Debinga from American University and renowned author, bestseller you're going to hear how, sadly, in the United States, racial hate, racial violence, and this whole regimen of structural racism continues. He's going to talk about why are these still dominant forces. He's going to talk about some of the lies that are told, the mythologies that exist, why it's so important that we teach true Black history. He's going to tell you a lot. We also are going to hear from Maureen Edibor, who will discuss, she is a TJC fellow. Daryl, do you realize that if Ahmaud was alive today, that he could be a TJC fellow? He could be joining us April the 3rd through the 8th in Phoenix for our young millennial Gen Z training event. He could have been there. And I just want people to understand how tragic this is to see this beautiful young man slain for no reason other than hate and mythologies. We're going to also, and so Maureen Edibor is going to go deeper into what we can do in this time about passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, and how that can help us to build the political power, to hold people accountable. Carl Snowden is going to also speak, and he will talk about why a couple years ago he created that Emmett Till alert system, and why the prevalence of hate is so dominant, even though he's located in Maryland, and people think Maryland's a liberal state, huh? He's going to tell the truth. He's going to put the truth to the lie. And we need to understand that. But the last person who's going to speak, and the person who really touched my heart today, because I read his post on Twitter, and his post on Twitter talking about Ahmaud and begging people to come tonight. He said, Ahmaud should be here today. He should be here today. He will discuss. Devin Bilford is a TJ fellow, a C fellow, and he's also, you're going to hear the co-founder of his own organization and CEO, Cash In and Grad Out. You're going to hear a lot about him and from him. And he's going to discuss what the lesson, the legacy of Ahmaud Arbery means as a young millennial. So again, our thanks to all of you for joining us, not only tonight, but joining us in this fight. Don't ever abandon this fight. It is people like Harriet Tubman from 1820 to 1913 when she left this earth, who gives us the spirit of resistance, the spirit of productiveness in a fight. I want to thank all those amazing people. Breland, can you show people some of the beautiful slides that have been prepared by our TJC fellows, Gen Zs, and young millennials about the struggle that we're in right now? Can you show those? Breland? Okay, here we go. And I want to thank Ashley Shannon and the social media committee for creating these beautiful images. I can't see them. Breland? Okay, well, we
They are
need to move
being
on. Oh, okay, because I don't see them.
Okay, yeah, I think they're on the YouTube, Barbara. They may not be
Okay,
on the
but we
Zoom.
just can't see it. Okay, all righty, good. Thank you, everybody. As you can see, those are flyers that you can find at tjcoalition.org to circulate in your communities and so that people can know. And so again, thank you, Ashley, Shannon. Thank you, Social Media Committee. Thank you, everybody who lifts up and supports the legacy of Ahmaud Arbery.
Thank you so much for those remarks, Barbara. You know, the reason that we gather here today is because of the family of Ahmaud Arbery and the amazing steps that they've taken to keep Ahmaud's name alive, to keep his story alive, to keep what he stood for alive, and it really does symbolize the struggle of a people, the people of color, of Black people. We're so excited to be able to welcome tonight a person who I call a friend, a person, not only a friend but a brother, someone who's just extremely close to Barbara and I and to the TJC family, and that is the father of Ahmaud Arbery, Marcus Arbery, who is with us tonight. Marcus, welcome, welcome, welcome. And want to ask you a few questions if we could get you off of mute. Okay, Marcus, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you there.
Okay, okay, great, great, great. How are you doing today, Marcus?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I just give all glory to God, and I thank God for y'all because y'all get this family strength to keep going, and y'all said y'all gonna be with us day one, and y'all didn't tell no lie. You're Miss Barbara, so I love y'all dearly, and I love the work y'all doing. I wish a lot more people can be like y'all and fight like y'all. This world gonna have some changes because we're gonna keep fighting.
Well, amen. And I tell you, Marcus, you and your family are the reason that we're able to fight because you all are fighters, and you've stood up to a crooked prosecutor. You've stood in a courtroom where demeaning things were said about Ahmaud, and most importantly, you showed up and you stood up. And you stood when you stood up, Marcus. When you and the Arbery stood up for Ahmaud Arbery, for Ahmaud, you were standing up for every Black child in America that has been done wrong. And so, we want to be certain that all the people of this country recognize exactly what it was that you did when you stood up and have a full appreciation for what it was like for the family. So, how's the family doing now, Marcus?
We still have our struggles, because the day make Ahmaud been gone 4 years, and that's a struggle that we if any went through that, that's a struggle you'll never get past, and when you see your kid killed because he was a Black man just running, that's really rough, that's rough and it's hard, and we still got our struggle.
Yeah, one of the things from what has happened to Ahmaud is that the state of Georgia now has put in place, some of the hate crimes laws, and we also know that the state of Georgia also has gotten away and done away with the ability of citizen arrests and things along those lines. When you see some of the positive things that have come as a result of the struggle that the family has gone through and what really Ahmaud has gone through, does that bring any level of comfort to the family?
It's a hard question. It's a hard question. I want to say, Marcus, to you and to all the family, we know this is a day of grief, and we appreciate you being here. We regret the technical issues that people can't see your faces, but we want to just thank you so tremendously. The mayor of Brunswick wouldn't be the mayor without his standing up for the family. There
Mhm.
would not be an Ahmaud Arbery Park without the family standing up. There wouldn't be any sense among young people in Brunswick that some justice can be acquired if people fight together. We will always be there, and we will see you on March 27th. Probably before then, right? We'll see you on March 27th at that courthouse, because we're not going to be silent, nor will we be absent. So thank you, Marcus. I know that you got nothing but love in your heart for your son. And thank you for the love that you have for all the young people. Just thank you, sir.
And thank you for those remarks, Barbara. You're absolutely right. We ask all of America and beyond to please pray for the Arbery family. Please pray for them daily. As just for their strength to continue to carry on. Barbara and I can certainly share with you, and I'm going to ask Barbara to tell the story how we came into contact with the Arbery family, and they're when we met them, just the struggle that they were going through to get through because of what they had been through. And it really is a testament to the strength of family, to the faith in God, and to the determination and support of a loving people. So, please, everyone, if you get the opportunity, you don't have to meet them individually to pray for them. They're part of the human community. And we ask that you lift up that prayer and be with this family. Barbara, before we go into the panel discussion, could you tell folks how we came across the Arbery?
Yes, and I'm so happy to hear that people can see Marcus on Facebook and IG and on YouTube. And just thank you, Marcus, for being there. Marcus, is Diane there? Is Diane Jackson there?
Marcus, you're still on mute.
Well, okay, our technical issues. But I just wanted to.
Diane, you'll make Barbara.
Okay, thanks. And I know Kim is there, right?
Yes, ma'am. Kim here too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, that's all I want to know. So you can mute it again. You can mute it so it doesn't echo. Okay. Let me just say that God brought us together. And if you want to dispute it, let me tell you what happened. We were in Brunswick doing nothing but making sure that we were organizing people to vote, to make sure they were aware that it was time to vote in Georgia. And we had a votercade, and we staged the votercade with the reluctant support, late support of the city, to go, into the communities in Brunswick, especially those where there was very low voter turnout. And what happens for us is that we are there, we're delayed because some people are late and there's some other issues going on. And this truck drives by us and it goes into the back of the park, and we see this lady driving this truck, and she goes back into the park, and the next thing we know, she comes back out and she stops and she says, "What y'all doing?" And Dana Beckham, who is one of the community organizers and a Gullah Geechee griot. Got to put it back on mute, Mark. And she absolutely says, "Oh, Miss Diane, you need to hear about this." And Miss Diane parks her car, her truck, comes over to me, and two things happen. Dana says, "Barbara Arnwine, I want you to meet Diane Jackson Arbery, who is the oldest matriarch aunt of the Arbery family. And she is his aunt. She was Ahmaud Arbery's aunt. And tears start just flowing. And Diane, and then she says, Miss Diane, I want you to meet Barbara Arnline. She's here to do voting rights, etc. And our tears are just flowing because of the respect and love for each other. And in that moment, we become inseparable because God puts us together to be this force to fight for justice. Diane and the family tells us that they're feeling abandoned at that moment because it's been quite a while since there's been any protests in the street, anything. And they're feeling that justice isn't coming, that somehow justice has been waylaid and that they're not going to see it. And they're not even sure, some aren't even sure it's worth going to the courthouse. And we say to everybody, Daryl and I, because Daryl will meet them a few weeks later in Atlanta when they come to, when the family comes down to help urge people to vote and get all over the state, urging people to vote. But we said to Diane, we said to Marcus, we said to everybody, you'll be there because we're going to be there. We're going to be in the courtroom sitting right next to you. And Marcus, that seemed kind of unbelievable, right, at the moment? It just seemed like one of those plans that so many people promised you stuff and didn't deliver, right? And and when Daryl and I showed up for the first hearing, there might have been 8 people there? And the family, there might have been 8 people there. And we said, doesn't matter, we'll be back next time. Then the next time we came, what did we do, Daryl? We organized in the community because Miss Diane said, we want people to see that folks are here to support the family so that they can understand that they need to also support. So we did our first march and we did several marches. I don't know, 12 of them probably through the community. And by the last time we finished the last march on the day, the triumphant day of the victory, there were hundreds of people in the streets, hundreds of people who had marched, hundreds of people. So let's remember, there's nothing worse than the tragedy of somebody being killed for nothing but racial hate. Then the media tells all the lies, they repeat all the lies the killers tell. And then there's a sense of abandonment because the cameras, when they're gone, people don't want to be there anymore because they're not getting any limelight. But one thing about TJC, we don't care about the cameras. The best camera we see is in your eyes. The best camera we see is in your faces and in your standing up. That's all we want. And so God bless you. And Daryl, that's the story in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for everything that the family is doing, has done, and will do as we move forward. And we do look forward to still marching and being with the family. I wanted to take a moment now just to introduce the members of our panel, and then let's go into this discussion and let's talk about Ahmaud Arbery. Let's talk about Black history. Let's talk about voting rights. Let's talk about how they're all intersect. We have with us today Dr. Omekongo Dibinga, who is a professor at American University. He's an author, lies about Black people, just an outstanding read, as a lecturer, as well as a motivational speaker. We also have with us Maureen Edelbar. She too is a professor at Washington and Lee University. She is a alumni of TJC, the Transformative Justice Coalition training. She's a political commentator and she's a voting rights expert, and she's been published several times regarding voting rights and voting rights issues and doing research in the area of voting rights. We also have with us Carl Snowden, who's the convener of the Caucus of African American Leaders. He and the caucus instituted the Emmett Till alert system so that when any type of race based incident occurs, there's an alert that goes across folks' phone to let them know what happened, where it happened, and the level of alert that they need to be concerned about. He's also a former director of African American Affairs for the Office of the Maryland Attorney General. We also have with us Devin Vilford. Devin is a TJC alumni. He's a graduate of Florida A&M University. He is the CEO and co-founder of Cash In Grad Out Foundation, getting cash in to help graduates pay off their student loan debt. By way of background, Devin, is 26 years old. Ahmaud, when he was killed, was 25 years old. So when we hear Devin's voice, we hear what could have been Ahmaud's voice as well. We also have with us attorney Gerald Griggs. Uh, uh, Brother Griggs is the president of the state conference of the NAACP of Georgia. He's a civil rights lawyer. He's an activist. And I can tell you that on the day that the Transformative Justice Coalition was marching through the streets of Brunswick, I turned and looked to my left, and who's there on my shoulder? No, none other than Gerald Griggs. When we sitting in the courtroom to get the judgment in the state case, in the state criminal case regarding Ahmaud's killing, who's sitting there, first person to jump up and shout and just being so proud of what happened with regards to the verdict. It was Gerald Griggs. So, we certainly will want to welcome Gerald Griggs to this discussion. And Gerald, I wanted to start with you with the first question here. So, I gave some of the information with regards to what you experienced, and just really a small piece of what you experienced with regards to the trial of Ahmaud Arbery. And I remember you indicating to me that this is history when the verdict came through and came out with regards to the white jury that issued the guilty finding for Ahmaud. You attended the trials, you attended the protests, the marches, the rallies regarding the slaying of Ahmaud. What lessons do you believe America should learn from the slaying, the trial, and the subsequent push for 100% justice for Ahmaud?
Well, first, I just thank you guys for convening this conversation, this much needed conversation about our dear brother Ahmaud. And I always give the complete praise to the family for their insistence on justice in this case. But as you said, I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, the 13th president of the Georgia State Conference. And we heard the cries of Ahmaud. We heard the cries of his family, and we organized. And the community in Georgia, when they saw the video, engaged the hearts and minds of the entire country. So let's kind of take ourselves back.
Yes.
As the family says, on this day 4 years ago, the country didn't know what happened. Georgia didn't know what happened. And it took 74 days for the truth to come out. And it wasn't until the family, through their advocacy and their push to get all of the answers, and then, of course, the release of the video that went viral, that the world saw what happened in Scintilla Shores in Brunswick. But what happened was a modern day lynching. And people were organized like we organize when there's ever a lynching in the South. And so, as a member of the NAACP, then we heard the clarion call of a similar incident that happened in Mississippi, about 50 some odd years ago with Emmett Till. And so this is our modern day Emmett Till. But the difference was, we in Georgia, through the power of organizing, through the power of listening to the family, through the power of Southeast Georgia, said, oh no, this is not going to happen on our watch. And so they marched, they protest, they went down to the Gold Dome and made sure elected officials heard them. We took a busload of elected officials down to Scintilla Shores to drive the street, to walk, to see the abandoned building that was being built, that he was not burglarizing, to see where he laid on the ground, blood soaking the concrete. And we heard the voice of justice crying out from the concrete. And so it was a historic moment in Georgia. it was a historic moment in the history of this country, because let's remember 2020 was one of those pivotal moments. But 2020 started in Scintilla Shores. Freedom Summer started in Scintilla Shores. So before we knew Breonna, before we knew George, we were running for Ahmaud, and we still are. And so I got the call from John Perry, who was then the president of the Brunswick NAACP. We organized through our state conference and all of the units to come down. There was a rally at the courthouse that day, that May the 8th, a few days after the video went viral. And when I say thousands of Georgians showed up, and you saw the resolve of Georgia that they were going to continue to run with Ahmaud. And we've been running with Ahmaud ever since, through the trial, both in state court and federal court, the conviction in state court and the conviction in federal court. And now we continue to run to uphold those convictions, both in the 11th Circuit, which is the Court of Appeals hearing that's coming up on March the 27th. But we have not forgot about one individual, Jackie Johnson. And so as the family says they want full and total and complete justice, we will be there when Jackie has her day in court, and we will make sure that justice occurs. Because like Daryl said, we were there when the verdict was read, and it felt like, a release of all of the pent up frustrations of Black people throughout the years, especially Black Georgians, because we've seen lynchings before, and we've seen the court system through all white juries do the wrong thing. But I think because of the resolve of the family, because of the resolve of the activists, because of the resolve of the community, and when I say the community, I mean Brunswick, I mean Glenn County, I mean the 6 counties around Glenn County, southeast Georgia, and we all saw them turn this tragedy into a voting rights bonanza, leading in the changing of the law in Georgia, leading for the changing of the government system in Glenn County, including the DA.
Yeah.
And to see them harness that energy for justice, not only for Ahmaud, but for all of the other families that they have been with and they have been working with. And so it's just an honor, unfortunately, to meet them in this situation, but it was an honor to be a part of this movement that continues, and to just see the courage 4 years later of this family that continues to push and that continues to demand full and complete justice. And the Georgia State Conference is going to stand behind them. We're going to stand with these activists. We're going to stand with the community, and we're going to get full justice for Ahmaud.
Hey, and tell people, Gerald, about March 27th.
Yeah, so March 27th, Travis and Gregory McMichael and William Roddy Bryant have appealed their hate crimes conviction in federal court. And so they appealed to the 11th Circuit, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, and they will have their oral arguments on their appeal. And basically what they're saying is that this was not a hate crime and that they should not have been convicted as a hate crime, even though we know, based on the evidence, this was clearly a hate crime. We knew it was a hate crime because they chased him because of race. They shot him because of race. They believed he did not deserve to be in that neighborhood because of his race. And they wanted to make sure that they made a citizen's arrest and used the extrajudicial power of Georgia to exact a racial punishment. So we want to make sure we stand with this family and be there on the 27th to make sure we send a message to the 11th Circuit that justice in Georgia should continue, and that this case needs to continue, and they need to continue to serve their sentence. And the jury got it right. So we hope that everybody within the sound of my voice, if you can't be there on March the 27th, we want you to be there if you can, but if you can't be there, please share this on social media that all roads lead to Atlanta, March the 27th at 9 a.m. at the 11th Circuit.
Right.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Darren.
Thank you so much for that, Gerald. And we definitely will encourage everyone to join us on March 27th in Atlanta for that appeal hearing. Dr. Omekongo Dibinga, you're a professor at American University. You're author of really one of the top-selling African American books, Lies About Black People. When you consider the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, and you listen to a lot of the information that we've brought out with a lot of the name calling from the killers that took Ahmaud's life, and I just wonder, is there a pattern? Is there a historical pattern of racism in America that is identified with what now leads to this slaying of this young black man in the streets of Brunswick, Georgia?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the late great activist Julian Bond said if you take the word America, and flip it around, it spells out I am race. There's nothing that happens in this country that race is not at the bottom at. And so you have to understand you can't just slay somebody unless you dehumanize them. And you can't dehumanize them unless you use the language of dehumanization. And whether you're studying any type of genocide, whether we're talking Armenia, Rwanda, Congo, the Holocaust, Native American persecution here in the United States. Once you start to introduce the language of things like vermin, of things like rats, of things like animals, it makes it easier to justify slaying these individuals. And so when you look at the experience of Black people in the United States, we've been called everything but a child of God. And so they come up with so many different names. And when you look at it, every single time we have these types of slangs, this same type of language is used. And you have to be mindful of the fact that those in this country who were quick to try to get these murderers off also will try to do other things to dehumanize us. They will say things like, well, look at the clothes that they were wearing. Look at the language that they use. They'll start bringing in things that have nothing to do with the victim. They'll start bringing in, look at the language of hip hop. Look at how they treat each other. This type of mindset, anything to justify Black death. We also have to be mindful of the fact that this country has a history of putting the murder of Black people on display. So when we're talking about lynchings and decapitations and hangings and putting them on full display so that other Black people would know not to speak up. And that's why you can go on YouTube right now and make a playlist of killings of unarmed Black people, but you can't do that for other groups, because when other folks get slayed, they'll say things like, out of respect for the family, we're not going to show these images. But what about our respect? What about it in this country makes us feel comfortable that we have to televise and see Black death in order for it to be believed? That's part of America's history. And not only would they, back in the day, lynch us, but they would also fight over the body parts and then put the pictures of the lynchings on postcards and distribute them across the country on postcards that were mailed out by the United States Postal Service. So this language, this attitude, this is part of America's history. And they didn't say that he was trapped like a human being, trapped like a rat. Because when you get a rat trap, you want to kill that rat. You want to slay that rat. And that's how they disparage not only him, but disparage our entire community. And so this is a long history of how they view us and how they feel comfortable deputizing themselves to slay us.
Amen.
And Dr. DeBay, I've got to ask you, because as you were laying that out, one of the things that stayed in my mind, and Barbara and Carl and some of the others that were down there with us, heard me say this over and over again. One of the things that these three killers did was that they videoed what they were doing. Is that significant to you? Is that the same as the body parts from the lynchings and things like that they wanted to preserve, to record what it was that they were doing? Of course, that played a role in their downfall, but isn't that indicative of that same behavior that you were just laying out?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Kansas City Chiefs, had a Super Bowl parade, a couple of days ago or weeks ago, when people skipped work and skipped class, to go attend that. That's what they used to do for lynchings in America. People would take their kids out of school. They would, skip work. It would be advertised in the newspaper that a lynching was going to go down. And so what these individuals did is right in line with that. Who in here on this Zoom call, who's watching anywhere in the live streams, would feel comfortable not only slaying somebody, but videotaping it? It's not in our mindset to think like that. But because of our history, as what John Stewart called that racial wallpaper that just lines up across this country, people are and look, we thought that having body cameras on police would would make crime go down significantly as it relates to the shootings of unarmed Black people. But we saw an uptick in many cities because that camera makes them feel even more emboldened to do what they do to us. The idea of, well, I don't care, I'm gonna do it on camera. So we have to be mindful. This is part of America's racialized history of recording and filming Black death for the world to see, whether they are officers of the law or whether they are former officers of the law or people on the streets, as George Zimmerman types who feel like they've been deputized to protect their community from us. This is absolutely right in line with the dehumanization of what happens when they see us. This is not new. They just got new devices to record and distribute it.
Wow. You know, Carl Snowden, yeah, when I listen to Dr. Dibinga lay out the history of it, when I listen and remember the fight that the Arbery family put up to be certain that justice was brought, 100% justice is being brought for Ahmaud. We're not at 100% yet, right? We're at 90%. We got 10% to go because we still have Jackie Johnson to get. But when I listen to the fight that the Arbery family has put up, when I look at the fight that the community is putting up, you know, you're one of those people that, you're one of those fighters. You're one of those activist fighters, whether it's in the courtroom, the classroom, or legislative halls. You're a fighter, and you're a fighter for justice. And you've had a chance to be in Brunswick and go to the site where Ahmaud was slain. I've got to ask you, you know, what should the community be doing around what's happening? You've seen the response from the Arbery family. You saw the response of the community. What else can be done? And is it consistent with what needs to be done to move us forward as a country?
Well, Daryl, let me first, before answering that, really take a moment to thank you and Barbara. I think people misunderstand where we are in America today.
Yes.
Think of what was said earlier by Gerald and others. Barbara came to Georgia and tell the story of how she met the family. Think of what has happened since then. Oftentimes, I think that it is important for us to control the narrative, to be able to tell the story, and to make sure that people understand what happened. Most people have no idea that what happened in Brunswick led to a defeat of a president called Donald Trump. It is not by accident that people were energized, mobilized, and organized around America. And that energy, that demand for justice, because we see these shootings and deaths over and over again, had many, many people going to the polls. Many people think, for example, that the Million Man March was the first time in American history that there was a million. Not true.
Not true at all.
They have gathered people over and over again. For example, when the election took place in 2020, millions of Black people went to the polls. The current president of the United States acknowledged that had it not been for Black people, he would not be there. We're talking about the power of the vote. Listen, the power of the vote is incredible, what we can do. Malcolm X said in 1964, it's either the ballot or the bullet. There are people on the right who are now saying the ballot or the bullet. And then they're serious what's coming in 2024. So I applaud you and Barbara because I think you have the insight. You understand American history. This is not new. In my remarks by simply saying this, it was President Biden who said that the election in 2020 was about the soul of America. Well, anybody that knows what's going on now knows that the election of 2024 is but a democracy. Will we have a democracy? Will we have the kind of system that allows people to be able to vote? And because of the work Barbara and you have been doing in the Transformative Justice Coalition, I listened with a ear, and I heard Barbara said the current mayor of Brunswick would not be mayor had it not been for Black people and that vote. So I am one who's committed to the notion that we have to do everything we can to encourage people to go to the polls. And we also need to understand that there's a new movement. Actually, it's not new, it's an old movement, but using new tactics. They're actually paying Black people to tell other Black people not to vote. There are people who are mercenaries, make no mistake about it, who are taking money and going into communities and trying to give out disinformation, misinformation, and to confuse people. I want to encourage us, particularly people watching, to take the moment and Google the Emmett Till security alert, which you made a reference to. We are living in a very serious time. People need to understand why there's a need for an Emmett Till security alert. Brother Joe down in Georgia, we got to be emulating this. These people are not joking. And so we have to be prepared on many fronts. So again, I thank you and Barbara for putting this together. This is an ongoing discussion.
Thank you for that, Carl. And one of the things, Maureen Edibar, that Carl Snowden raises is the power of the vote and how you can change a community by going to the ballot box to elect people, representatives that hold your interests. What the Arbery family did was showing the power of the vote, the power of the ballot. You lied to me. You withheld information from me. So I'm going to get somebody on the ballot that will be honest, that will at least work for my interests as a prosecutor in my area. One of the things that Carl raised, Maureen, was all of the shenanigans that are going on in elections today. Who can vote, who can't vote, moving polling places, all other types of qualifications. Can you sort of share with us? I mean, you're a voting rights expert, right? Are there some things going on the federal level, the FTVA, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act? Are there things going on today that can address some of these issues dealing with voting in the African American community and the community at large?
Yeah, thank you for that great question, Daryl. And also just thank you to Dr. Arnwine and thank you to the Arbery family for sharing this platform with us. I want to just touch briefly on what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. As others on this call have said, what happened to him was a lynching. It was a modern day lynching. It was an unlawful killing of an accused person by a racist mob. And as others have said, the prosecutor, Jackie Johnson, used the power of her office and I think the power of whiteness to protect the men who lynched Ahmaud Arbery. She's now facing misconduct charges and obstruction of justice charges. And, those charges have languished for quite some time, but it's really important that justice in the court of democracy, at least, has come full circle as she was voted out back in 2020 for her failure to prosecute the people who lynched Ahmaud Arbery. But back to the direct question about voting reforms that are circulating in Congress. So someone on this call earlier, or on this YouTube live earlier, mentioned the power of misinformation. And I think misinformation is why the Freedom to Vote Act, why the Voting Rights Advancement Act, which is the modern day Voting Rights Act, did not pass in a Democratic Congress. Misinformation. John Lewis wrote the first 10 pages of the Freedom to Vote Act. It's a critical and transformative legislative package that would basically create national standards to protect our fundamental right to vote. It would combat the the outsized influence of big money in politics. It would block partisan election subversion. It would essentially ensure that all congressional districts give fair representation to all and do not dilute the votes of underrepresented communities, Black and Brown communities. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would also restore the Voting Rights Act to its place before the disastrous Shelby case ruled on 10 years ago that struck down preclearance and allowed states to basically enact extremely discriminatory voting laws that targeted Black voters, as the court said, with surgical precision. So right now, these two bills have been introduced in this Congress, and hopefully they have a chance of passing. I want to call on, the people who are watching this YouTube live and the folks who are concerned with the fundamental right to vote and how it's being degraded by courts and state legislatures to call their mayors, call their elected officials, call their state attorney generals, call their members of Congress, write them letters, come to the District of Columbia or their local district offices, sit in their offices and demand action on both the Freedom to Vote Act and the Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Well, Maureen, look, I can't let you off that easy. This is 2024. Why do we need a Freedom to Vote Act and a John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act? What is it that's going on that we need this at all in the first place?
Great question, Daryl. You'd think in the world's oldest constitutional democracy, we would treat the right to vote as a right and not a privilege afforded to those who can take the day off work to vote, or those who live close to polling places, or those who simply have the resources to understand the complex patchwork of voting access laws, right? There are intentional efforts made by, I think, nefarious state legislatures to pick their voters instead of have the voters elect the people in power. And it's those perverse incentives that are the precise reason we need the Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We're also faced with really rogue courts all over the country, like in the Eighth Circuit, which for the first time in the Voting Rights Act's history held that it doesn't contain an individual right to sue a state for a Voting Rights Act violation. And this is something that is not grounded in the text of the Voting Rights Act, in the legislative history, or in any logical reading or understanding of the act. Since 1965, 90% of the plaintiffs who have filed claims under the Voting Rights Act have been individuals or groups like the NAACP or civic engagement nonprofits who really care about the fundamental right to vote. So, nefarious state actors and a stacked judiciary that is unsympathetic to the importance of the fundamental right to vote or why we need the Freedom to Vote Act and the Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Thank you so much for that, Maureen. Devin Vilford, you're 26 years old. Quite honestly, Ahmaud was 1 year younger than you when he was slain. He's your peer for all intents and purposes. When you watched, heard, learned of the killing of Ahmaud, what did it mean to you? How did you react? And was there anything that then inspired you to do anything based on what you saw and what you were experiencing with Ahmaud's killing?
Yes, and again, thank you for having this panel with everybody. My sincere condolences to the Arbery family for everything they've gone through. We worked together before in previous engagements with TJC, so my prayers go out to you all always. So when the situation first happened in 2020, for me, I was on duty, active duty, with the Army, and I was serving for COVID recovery and COVID assistance. And in the South, of course, as a just normal black man, black person, you're going to face racism. But then with that concentration of the military, where that's a predominantly white male institution, you're going to see even more racism and experience more racism. So during the whole 2020, especially in that summer, it was tense. And as I was on active duty, serving our country, especially through a once in a century pandemic, just seeing the video and as the information trickled out and as tension started to build up, how people would talk about it around me within the military. Again, these are people who are supposed to be protecting the country and its citizens. Command, member of the NAACP, lifetime member, I should say, but also someone who's protecting the country and recovery when it comes to the pandemic. But I'm also experiencing racism at the same time from the people who I'm supposed to be working with to do this. So when it comes to, just seeing the video and witnessing it, I'm also experiencing my own forms of racism and having to fight back against that while in uniform every day, and participating in the NAACP's challenge of running, with Ahmaud, for Ahmaud. I participated in that too. Because in the military, of course, working out is very important. So it goes hand in hand that way. So there was a range of emotions, especially at such a young age for me, now that I'm a veteran, And at the time, it was a range of emotions of standing up for what's right, making my voice heard, even in the face of opposition, but also seeing the modern day lynching of that video, um, and then just witnessing how the response from my peers around me in the military wasn't one of compassion and support for a citizen who was murdered, but one of prejudice and hate. And it didn't feel right, but that was the situation at the time, unfortunately, and that just shows how much work we have to do.
Yeah, thank you for that, Devin. Dr. Dominga and other members of the panel, when there's been change in America, we see it generally coming from our youth, right? From that 18 to 35, and sometimes younger age range. I think back, Barbara, to the story that Betty Boynton told us when she was crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge as we prepare for Bloody Sunday that's about to come up in another week. Where she lied about her age and snuck out for school and snuck out from her parents at the age of 15, 16 years old so she could walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis on Bloody Sunday. So I think about the commitment that youth have to change. You know, do you think there is something about the Ahmaud Arbery case and the framing of it that appealed or called out to the consciousness of our youth to respond, and we've seen a response from that? Is there a correlation that's there?
I would say absolutely. I mean, there's that, that the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, we saw that video, and once we saw the video of, George Floyd, these were two types of examples where people could not use the excuse that they use so often. He must have done something. She must have done something if they just didn't resist. And again, mindful, one of those killers was a retired police officer. And sometimes we just give the narrative that we use for the police to private citizens. And that's what happened with Zimmerman and as well. And that's something that we have to be mindful of. But I think going back to the youth reaction, when they saw these videos, it really starts to stick. And as someone who teaches young people and speaks across the country to them, they see how easily that could be them for like the Black students that I talk to. And then for my non-Black students, particularly my white students, when I talk about this or Brianna and so many of these other people, and I ask, can you see yourself in this, or can you see your family member, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle? The overwhelming majority of the answers is no, they cannot. And many of them feel guilty about that fact, that they can't humanize us enough to be able to see a family member in that situation of their own, because it's the farthest thing from their mind. And that also inspires many of them to act. We have to be, when we saw a lot of these Black Lives Matter protests, and they're like, like Brother Gerald was saying, Ahmaud Arbery, this was before many of the other ones in terms of that summer of 2020. Those were interracial marches. Those were, just like with the, civil rights movement. It wasn't just Black people marching over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So there was a replica of that. So I applaud the youth of all backgrounds who are starting to see the common humanity in this world of social media, which is actually anti-social media. People are doing so much to pull us apart. These types of moments have had the ability to pull us together. And so I think that's the issue with young people. And then a lot of young people are just coming up in more diverse experiences where they're more likely to have Black friends or white friends. I saw one video where a white high school student stood in front of her Black male high school classmate when the police were trying to arrest him. This idea of Ubuntu, this idea of I am because we are, that type of mindset, it's becoming more and more present. And we have to make sure as the elders, whether we're 35, 45, 75, we are the elders, we have to make sure that we're helping them to channel that energy, because the last thing I'll say about this is when people see that youth uprising, they try to disconnect them from the elders, which goes against our African practices, whether we're African, African American, Caribbean, of listening to the griots, the elders who can teach us those experiences from the past. So we can't let them divide us, and we have to keep pushing them forward, not be jealous of them, work with them, and inspire each other.
Thank you for that, Dr. Dominguez. And Gerald Griggs, I know that you want to weigh on this because I just know that when things were going on in the Arbery case, and you came on up from Atlanta to be there with us and the family at the courthouse, and Cliff Albright comes up there to be with us from Black Voters Matters, and you taking the microphone, going into the streets. You wanted to be. What, we're watching this reaction from the young folks that are there. It's almost like a call to arms, Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, and so, like so many have stated before, 2020 was a year like none other. I think, and I like to call it our freedom summer, 2020. But what happened was everyone was stuck in the house, and then we all saw an atrocity happen on our phone that we could not deny. And so, we always say there are three generations at work. There's the wisdom generation, that's our elders. There's the professional generation, that's us. And then there's the energy generation. And the energy generation says it's time to go outside. And so we went outside with them, and the community felt that energy, and it just permeated. You could tell they were sick and tired, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, they were sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so we had to channel that energy and remind some of our wisdom generation, this is exactly what y'all used to do. Dr. King took over highways. I got tired of hearing during the first iteration of Black Lives Matter, why y'all taking over highways? And then I remember the Edmund Pettus Bridge leads to a what? Highway. And so they had to get in the way. John Lewis, my mentor, always says sometimes you just got to get in the way. You got to call things out that are wrong. And so I think that we are in the middle of a new movement, which, like my brother said, is not a new movement. It's a continuation of the old movement. We are just using the same tactics. And that's why I'm so appreciative of the Arbery family for channeling the anger and the frustration in a positive direction, which led to the polls. And there is no coincidence.
Yeah.
Georgia decided the election. There's also no coincidence that the backlash is in Georgia in a courtroom in Fulton County. And so we have to think about and ground this in the historical perspective that we are all in right now. And we have to make sure we lift up this family for giving us the marching orders. The marching orders was, okay, we're going to get justice for these armed vigilantes, but not just them, the folk that empowered them to think this was a good idea. So it's not just Jackie Johnson. It's not just George Barnhill. It's not just the GBI or anybody else that had anything to do with covering this up, but it's the politicians that empowered it by allowing Georgia to have a pre-slavery type of law that deputized regular citizens to make citizens arrest. Once they realized, oh, that had roots in slavery, we have to repeal that. But not only that, in Georgia, where we are the birthplace of civil rights, we didn't have a Civil Rights Act until Ahmaud Arbery. And so we had to change the law there. And it gave the impetus to the rest of the country that, yes, marching and protesting and voting and suing people works. And it works very well. It works so well that now the opposition is trying to change laws. Like in Georgia, just 2 days ago, we don't want to have automatic registration anymore. Why? Because, people will actually go and exercise their right to vote like 5 million Georgians did in 2020. So I think what we're seeing is the young people coming into their own, understanding their power, focusing their resolve. It's just like my brother just said, that feeling he had while he was serving his country, but still experiencing racism. Well, what we typically do when we experience that type of pressure is put that pressure back on the system. You're not going to allow what happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 100 years ago to define who I am, because my ancestors overcame that, so I'm going to overcome this. And that's why William Roddy Bryant and Travis and Gregory Michael are sitting in Jackson right now, and they're going to stay there because in Georgia, we know how to deal with situations like this. It's not a coincidence that many of the seminal members of the civil rights era came from Georgia. And so now it's time for Georgia and all of our brothers and sisters to show the rest of the country how we do it in Georgia. And so that's why I'm so excited and fired up about the young people. That's why when we get outside and go on the streets, the young people are the ones leading it. They are giving us the energy. And I'm just super excited about what's to come because they're still counting us out. They're still talking about, oh, in 2024, oh, we can't do it again. Y'all thought we couldn't do it in 2020. You thought we couldn't do it in 2021. You thought we couldn't do it in 2022. We took a slight break in 2023, but what makes you think we can't do it again? And if you're not talking to that base, the ones who decided the presidential election for Barack Obama and the ones that decided the presidential election for Donald Trump, and then the ones that decided the presidential election for Joe Biden, you're missing out because again, Black people have decided the last 3 presidential elections. We voted twice for Obama. We took a vacation in 2016, and then we came back out in 2020. Now, this election is coming up, is the most important election of our lifetime. And whomever speaks to the interests of Black people will get the vote. And we're not just talking about talk anymore. It's time for deliverables. So I think Ahmaud's family showed us how to channel that anger and get results. And it permeated to the rest of the country. So I'm super excited about the young people, super excited about this family. And we just getting started.
Thank you, Brother Griggs. And every time I hear you, you get all fired up and ready to get
I
on that train
mean,
and plane and head on down to Georgia to get this stuff started. But Barbara, I've got to come back to you because Barbara, look, we were there for everything dealing with the Ahmaud Arbery case. We were in the streets. Prior to everybody else being in the streets, we were listening as we went around Georgia. And we heard young people talking about they're going to vote because of what happened to Ahmaud. They're going to vote because
again,
of police violence. But in addition to that, Barbara, we now know that there's a Black mayor that was elected in New Bern, Alabama. There's a predominantly Black city that the white folks won't let him take his seat, will not let him
that's
be
right.
mayor. He was elected 3 years ago, and he is yet to sit as that town's mayor. We know that there's a sheriff, a Black sheriff, that beat a white sheriff in an election in Louisiana by 1 vote, and that the judge in that Louisiana town said, "You're going to redo this whole election." Barbara, I listen to those things. I see much of the progress that we have made in the United States, but it looks really questionable right now as to where we are as a people within the United States. What should we be doing now? All of this stuff is coming at our young people. All this stuff is coming at our seniors. All of the voter suppression is out there that Maureen so eloquently laid out. What should we be doing right now, Barbara?
We got to do what we've always done. Fight back. We have always been incredibly creative, energetic, innovative. We have shocked, people with our thinking, with our ability to, to really not only jump through some hoops, but to cut down hoops down, get rid of them. Black folks, the genius of Black folks is in our ability to see beyond the moment that we're in. It's always why, the first thing we learn as kids is what? Joy comes in the morning, right? Because our people have always been able to project the future and to say that this future is what shall be, regardless of what man thinks he controls, right? So there's always been that element to it. I've been reading the new book that's on its way out by Professor Donald Jones. It's called The Presumption. Folks, you got to go and pre-order it. It's one excellent book that looks at, it's really a book about the criminal justice system, but as I told him at the lunch party last night, it could have been about voting rights, it could have been about everything, because the same tactics and strategies of white structural racism is used across the board. And we have to understand that, Daryl. And so part of the beauty of somebody like Harriet was that she understood that. You know, some of the beauty of somebody like a Fannie Lou Hamer, Lord have mercy. You know, she got it. You know, every time I think about them, you know, spraying her door, spraying her house up with what, 55 bullets in one shooting. Whenever I think about, you know, the graves that we visited of the Moors in Georgia, come on now, Gerald. When I think about Maceo Snipes, when I think about the beautiful Mary Turner, when I think about these brothers and sisters who gave everything to, you know, try to just enforce their rights as citizens in this country, not only to vote, but their own property, etc. You know, I think, folks, you know, that what we got to do right now is we got to inspirit each other. You know, one of the things I try to teach young folks is don't hang around people who just bring you down. If all they're going to do is make you depressed and you want to go and get underneath the bed and pull a couple more pillows over your head, then that's not the person you should be hanging out with. You need people who have energy, people who have conviction, people who have a faith in their vision to fight for justice. And that's why Georgia, as we've been talking about, it was young people who turned the vote in Georgia. More young people showed up in the history of Georgia. People were totally unprepared for them. And now, because of that, they've gotten rid of what? They have basically used voter suppression laws to get rid of absentee voting, you know, to really make it extremely difficult for people to use it. So in 2022, the untold story, what? Was that there were 1 million less ballots counted. Well, not one, but there were 1 million less ballots counted, and those ballots were absentee voters. All those absentee voters, 1 million of them, disappeared. And who's caught in that crossfire, everybody? Black seniors. Black seniors. So I want you to do something new for me. This 2024, by September, talk to all the Black seniors you know. Find out what's going to be their voting plan. Because when we were on the streets of Georgia, we saw Black seniors knocking on our doors because they saw our Protect the Vote signs. They saw the John Lewis vote, a bus, and they were knocking on the door saying, can you give me a ride to the polling place? Because they had no way to get there. So let's, you know, really think, you know, very creatively now, because we all have family. We all have connections, uncles, aunts, those aunts we love to death, you know, love you. Always, you know, rubbing, making sure that you got, you know, the right, you know, that you're not ashy. The ones who are giving you the food, the ones taking care. You know, I'm gonna go there, Gerald. You know, I'm gonna go there. You know, the ones who love us unconditionally, love back on them. Make sure that they are able to vote. There was nothing other than I saw than the tears of Black elderly who couldn't get to the polling site. So let's, you know, have you know, a plan that we have that focus to make sure that we take care of our elderly. We need you to do a couple of other things, folks. You know, if you go to tjcoalition.org, but if you also go to votingrightsalliance.org, votingrightsalliance.org, not only do you see the daily Black history series we've been putting out about Blacks and voting rights and the fight for voting rights, you will also see the 72 forms of voter suppression. The 72 forms of voter suppression. Learn them. But more than learning them, learn how to fight them and contradict them. That's what we do. We spend all our time saying, okay, this is the latest mess they come up with. How do we change it around? What I love about what Maureen said is that if we pass these voting rights acts, then I estimate that if we pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, 80% of all our litigation disappears in voting rights. 80%, folks. That's how powerful these laws are. That's why they pay what? I mean, that's why They did everything in the world to make sure Sinema and Manson wouldn't agree to the passage, right? Because those acts are that powerful. They restore the right of every single person who was previously formally incarcerated. I think there might be only one exception. They restore every single right to vote immediately upon release. Immediately upon release. Now, some of us want to go farther than that, right? But that's a whole other conversation. But immediately upon release. No fines, no fees, no barriers like we're seeing in Florida can be imposed. No parole, no probation can be used to stop that vote. They also, now I know a whole lot of Black folks going to say, oh yeah, the other thing it does, the Freedom to Vote Act, it would, and I'm only talking about federal elections, which is what it would affect, but also by nature, it will affect state elections. But it also bans anybody waiting in line to vote for more than 30 minutes. Think about it. How many Black folks we know that stood in line for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours to vote? None of that would be legal anymore. It also, all these cases about redistricting and partisan gerrymandering, about to see the Supreme Court come out with some nonsense in the Alexander case regarding how do you distinguish partisan and racial gerrymandering. Honey, the act actually has standards on that makes it very hard to pass gerrymandering that hurts Black folks and hurts Latinos and Native Americans, who are always the target of these racial and partisan, quote, partisan gerrymandering. The last thing I wanted to say, I mentioned the presumption, and I really recommend it very strongly to people. One thing it does is it shows that the one thing about the it talks about racism as an ideology, as as a practice, and etc. It also really makes you understand how the law continues to reinforce racism, especially in the criminal justice system, but it's all over the place in housing and voting. So one of the things as a lawyer that I want to say to all those lawyers, future lawyers, gonna be lawyers, think about this, folks. We're not doing it just to keep the system the way it is. We got to always be thinking creatively about what it should be. We should always look at this system and say, it ain't what it should be. It's not even halfway close to what it should be. And what our role is to make sure that the vision that Harriet carried, the vision that Malcolm carried, the vision that so many amazing Black folks carried in their hearts, the 4,000 they say 5,000 lynched. Come on, folks, probably like 20,000 because of all the people who, quote, disappeared. How many of you guys got people in your family? I have them who disappeared. They were successful Black folks, and they just, quote, disappeared, meaning somebody killed them and buried them somewhere where they never were found. So, we got to understand that, that they did not die for us to sit back. They died for us to stand up. They died for us to move forward. They died for us to make sure that the world that our children inherit is a much better world. A lot's been said about the young folks coming up, and I have a lot of faith and understanding, but I also understand that the biggest pro-structural racism force in this country is what I call racial inertia, meaning that just like colleges say when they get radically brilliant kids who raise hell on campus, they say, well, wait until they graduate. We'll just sit it out, because once they graduate, if they don't bring another crew with them, behind them, we can go back to what we've always done. And racial inertia is the driving force in the society. So the force is to keep us subordinated, to keep us from sharing power, from being dominant in the areas where we're strong. And so, the way they make racial inertia work is through these reinforcing legal structures of racial discrimination. So folks, let's share, let's learn, let's build together. Let's show up on March 27th. Let's not be absent. Let's show up in other ways. We're going to have a prayer for the family probably that morning, but we're going to show up on the streets for darn sure that day. We also want to make sure that people join us in Selma, and we will be in Selma. We're doing 3 workshops from 12 to 5. Please be there. And by the way, and then I'm going to stop there. I know I'm long-winded, but just let me finish. One other thing, folks. Months ago, I approached one of the new senators in Congress and said, we need field hearings to be held at that point, I said Selma during the anniversary. And later, after the 8th Circuit started acting up, I said, we need something done about the 8th Circuit. And I told people, we're working, trying to get field hearings. And people said, oh, stop. Ain't gonna get no field hearings. That's not happening. But I want you to know that the first senatorial field hearing on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act will happen this Friday. There's something about having the strength of vision, the courage to fight, the ability to love beyond yourself, and to love, our people broadly and wholeheartedly in all of our stuff. And I just want to thank you for being here. And thank you, Daryl, again, for this. And thank you, all these incredible panelists. I've been taking notes and writing all kind of stuff. So thank you for your inspiration. Just beautiful. Thank you. And oh, by the way, Davinga, I gave you 5 fire signs.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Oh, yes. Yes, sir. Dr. Davinga, thank you.
Thank you all.
Daryl, I think you're on mute.
Daryl, you're on mute.
Part of having
There.
a dog. I wanted to go over to Marcus Arbery, and
Yeah.
and Marcus, there's a question I wanted to pose to you as we start bringing this toward a close, and that is, what message do you want to give to our youth with the challenges that they face today and the challenges that you've gone through and experienced? What message would you like to give to our youth that are listening in to this discussion?
I urge them.
Yeah, take the other, anybody listening at the church, just take other instruments away from Marcus,
All right,
away
y'all
from
hear me
his
now? All right.
vicinity. Take them and put them on mute. Everything you got in that room, everybody put it on mute so that we can hear Marcus.
The message I got for the young Black people,
Yes.
Yes.
get out and vote. Because your vote does count. And it will bring some changes. We got these elected officials in office that ain't doing their job. And if you don't get out and vote, what good it is to talk about it? Get out and vote. That's very serious, because your vote does count. All our young people need to get involved. I'm talking about Black and white, because if you got right in you, you gonna want the right people to be in these offices to treat everybody equally. Get out and vote.
And Marcus.
Yes, I'm still here, Ms. Barbara.
Yes, can you have Kim come on for a minute and tell people? I know some people are saying they want to give. I know there's the foundation. Can Kim tell people about embracing Ahmaud's pace?
I'm here.
Hi, Kim, tell people about embracing Ahmaud's pace, which is a brand new foundation just created to help do work in Brunswick for young people. Tell them about it.
I don't have the paperwork with me right now, but I got it in my mind. It's embracing young Black and white people to help them. They can do things on their own pace, and helping young people that's knowing that they are talent. They can be talented if they stay in school or got good grades and stuff like that. This is what this foundation is all about.
And it's called Embracing Ahmaud's Pace.
Yes, ma'am.
And so people can just Google that and find it. Right?
And I got the website tonight. So if anybody want to like screenshot it, you can send a donation on that too, because I have the thing. She sent it to me tonight.
So why don't you make sure that you put it into the chat for Facebook?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
And make sure everybody has that. And because once again, what can we do? We can be supportive.
Right, yes, ma'am.
We can be very supportive.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Was there anything else that you wanted to say before we start closing this out?
Look at the people at the church.
Or Diane. Nice. Is Diane there?
Miss Diane, I know you don't like to talk, but could you just say a word? Okay.
She's here.
Yes, can she just come on camera and just say a word for a second?
Yes, ma'am, Miss Barbara.
We're trying to get the camera back.
Okay, all righty. Miss Diane is fire, folks. Miss Diane's no joke. There wouldn't be a TJC connection without Miss Diane, because she made that happen, and she has been amazing. And like I said, she's the one who said, let's march again, right, Gerald? It was Miss Diane who said, let's march again.
Absolutely.
And so, give her, all the, being the matriarch is hard in any family. Being the oldest is always hard, especially oldest daughter. But there she is. Hi, Miss Diane.
Hey, Miss Barbara, and hey, Daryl. And all
hey,
Diane. Up there on the panel.
All right, now we're so proud of you and so proud of the family and so grateful to God for all your amazing strength in the face of so much tragedy, so much opposition, so many other problems. But Daryl, you had a question for Miss Diane.
Yeah, Diane, we wanted to give you the opportunity to say something, because tonight, we're asking people to recommit to the fight for an inclusive democracy, to recommit to the memory of Ahmaud, to recommit to fighting for community and for fighting for love within our society. And I know that you would like the opportunity to speak on that. And so, I just want to provide you that opportunity, Diane.
Okay, well, today on the
4th year. Oh, there you are.
We heard her.
We heard her.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Today on the 4th year of his life, I brought about 200 people out today. And let me tell y'all something. I had the DA, I had the mayor, and I spoke to them about Jackie Johnson. And I told them that we ain't going nowhere. We're going to go to trial this year because we're tired. I said, oh, y'all can get up here and talk this good game to the family, but Jackie Johnson got to go to court this year. I said, my brother made a promise to me, and I made a promise to my mama that I would take care of the babies. He said he'll die for his, and I'm going to die along with him. That's a promise. Jackie Johnson coming to court this year. When y'all took 74 days and kept that video, and it took the GBI 3 days, when they saw the video, they said murder. Y'all said self-defense. Y'all had looked at this video, and I thank God for the man who released that video, not the one who took it, the one that released it, because he knew they had it for 74 days.
And Diane, we know that they actually had been bragging about it, showing it to family members. That's how we heard that there was a video. Is that they had been showing it to family members. And you know, Dr. Debinga talked about trophies and how, you know, at these lynchings, they would take trophies. They would cut off their fingers and all the other stuff and give it, you know, away and take it as a trophy. And this video was the trophy. And they had been just showing it around. That's how we found out it existed.
And brag.
And
brag.
Yes, they were
showing videos of my brother, baby boy, laying in the street just bleeding. Everybody stayed
unbelievable.
Everybody stayed in their house and didn't even come out to say, get that baby some water.
Jesus.
So today, it brought my anger out again. I went off in the park so bad to everybody say, Diane, God done gave you a voice. My voice is for Ahmaud. Nobody else but Ahmaud. Because I want them people to know that all y'all stay in y'all house and saw a baby laying in the street, still kicking.
My Lord.
He wasn't no dog. That was Mark and Wanda, baby boy.
Yes. Yes.
And I had to sit home every day. Sometimes I just watch that video and I look at the way Ahmaud was dead. This morning I got up crying because they showed the video on TV this morning when that boy blasted him the first time.
Jesus.
And I had to start singing to God.
Yes, ma'am.
To get a peace of mind back. I start seeing stars. And I asked God, I said, Lord, help me this morning. Don't let nothing happen to me. I already know I'm sickly. I say, Lord Jesus, do this for me right now. I went back to James Cleveland.
Yes.
Lord, do it for me right now. That's what I need right now. And I got up and I got ready and I thought about my commitment I made today when I thought people wasn't gonna be there for me. Tell you something. When we got the Ahmaud Park, the fire department, Glenn County Police, the mayor, because I spoke so hard, I say, y'all can hire from man, but you can't hire from God. That's what my dad always told us. Y'all hide behind these badges. I say, but one thing about it, whatever you're doing, when God tap on that door, you better have a reason for what you did. You better have an answer for it. Because y'all know Ahmaud was did wrong in Glenn County. Y'all ain't gonna never forget this, because we ain't gonna forget. Glenn County ain't gonna never forget what happened to Ahmaud. I can promise you that.
Amen.
If you see me, I'm gonna have on something about Ahmaud. I'm gonna let y'all know that this is not gonna be forgotten. You ain't gonna keep sweeping this on the road. You're gonna wish you let that one ran. You're gonna wish you let Ahmaud ran. This was the wrong one you messed with this time. And just like I told him today, y'all lucky Ahmaud granddaddy wasn't living. It would have been a totally different ball game. Because my dad didn't play by his kids. And Ahmaud was one of his best grandkids. He would have said, sons, get y'all guns. They would have cleaned Satilla up. But I thank our God. He said, this is my fight. Y'all let me know I got it. And thank
you
y'all.
so much,
We appreciate y'all's support. Thank y'all, Ms. Barbara. Y'all know I love you.
No, we love you. We love you.
Yeah. Thank
you
you,
know,
Diane. Thank you.
This Tele-Town Hall is about love too. And we want to just know, we want everybody at the church, we want the whole family, we want everyone to know we love you and that we are there with you, not just us, strategy wise and tactically wise, but also in heart and spirit. Okay. Daryl? Daryl, did we lose you?
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Diane, for those words. I want to
Daryl, you went out on us.
Daryl, you're frozen.
No, he's
Daryl.
back
okay.
now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can see
Thank
the
you.
beautiful slides too. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Barbara, for those words. Diane, thank you so much. And Marcus, thank you for all that you represent. Tonight, I want to thank, Attorney Gerald Griggs, the state president of the NAACP in the state of Georgia, Amakongo, Debinga, Dr. Debinga, just a phenomenal friend and just so much gratitude for all that he does. Encourage everybody to go get his book, Lies About Black People. Want to thank Maureen Edelbar, the professor at Washington Lee, and all that she's doing on the fight for voting rights, as well as Carl Snowden and the convener of African American leaders, Devin Vilford. Man, let me tell you, as a young brother that's on the move, he's going to be moving with that CEO as the co-founder with Cash In, grad out, taking care of the debt of young Black students coming out of HBCUs as they move forward. So best of luck with that. Folks, the message tonight is that we ask that you do what Diane Arbery said. We want you to recommit to remembering the Arbery family, recommit to being certain that the fight for diversity, the fight for inclusion, the fight to be worthy, to be recognized, your value, our value as a people, that never is lost. And we're asking tonight that you recommit to that. We also ask that if you're available on March the 27th, 2024, that you come on out to Atlanta, Georgia, stand lock armed with the family as they stand for that appeal. We'll be there, steadfast, unmovable, that tree by the side of the river, right? Just growing and planted and in place. That's what we need to do at this point in time. So I want to thank all of you for coming out, for viewing in. Barbara, do you have any closing words before we close it out?
Yes. Thank you again to all the panelists. Thank you to everybody at the church. Thank you to the Arbery family. Thank you for everything you've done. Because people, every time Diane and Marcus and Kim and the family speaks, it's like being re-traumatized. You live that pain and that grief again. You hear that prosecutor telling you that lie about the child had, quote, broken into a home and was shot inside the home when he was bleeding out in the street. Knew it, but lied about it. When you hear that the prosecutor, told the killers to go home and wash up. So they were destroying evidence in essence. When you hear all of this, I just want people to know it's hard for the family. Their strength is amazing. And they're, and what they give, they pay for it too. So I just, really want you to know that we're there with you. We didn't get to talk about everything about these banned books out here. We will. We didn't get to talk all that we wanted to about the criticality of teaching art history, but we did, and we will do more as we talk. We want to just tell people again to go to that daily series at votingrightsalliance.org and share. I am so happy and grateful to the newspapers that have been reprinting it, to the teachers who have been teaching it, to everybody. There's just so much. Let's keep sharing among ourselves. Let's get Dr. Debinga's book. Let's get, we got to. I mean, it's all about the knowledge, right? What did Malcolm do? He just read, folks. He read. He didn't sit around just talking to folks. He read. He got the knowledge deep into his soul where it all came together into one vision. And that's where I want to leave everybody. Let's keep on envisioning a new America. Let's envision one where there's real equality, not just the superficial stuff, not just taking away, to quote, the legal barriers. I'm talking about the interventions, the accelerators that are necessary to bring folks into a state of equality. I reject the McKinsey report saying it's going to take 300 years for Black folks to be equal. But that's if we allow American racial inertia to continue at the same pace. We got to stop it. We got to move it forward. We got to accelerate. We got to intervene. So those are things that I just want people to start just thinking about. To all the groups that are here, thank you so much that showed up for this, that circulated the flyers, that helped get out the word. And I'm going to just end again saying we're going to end where we started, with love for the Arbery family, with a commitment always to be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Barbara. And thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. Thank all of our guests for participating, the panelists for participating. Folks, we just encourage you tonight, today, and tomorrow to check on your voting status. Go to vote.org and check on your voting status. And if you are not registered, get registered. Be certain everybody in your household is registered. Be all certain that your family and friends are registered to vote. It's time to vote, folks. It's voting season. It's voting season. It's voting season. Follow the way of the Arbery family. Vote for people that are in your best interest. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
God bless you, all of you. Bye-bye. Much love, Marcus.
All right.